Welcome back to Beyond the Plan. Today we're bringing it close to home for parents, grandparents, aunties, uncles, and anyone who has guardianship over a child or teen while also balancing work, life, and everything in between. Because when a young person in your life isn't well, physically or mentally, everything shifts. Schedules change, focus gets pulled, stress levels rise, and navigating the healthcare system can feel like a full-time job on top of your real one. In this episode, we're talking about the realities families across Canada are facing when it comes to accessing timely care for kids and teens, and why this isn't just a family issue. It's something employers and benefit leaders should be paying attention to as well. Let's dive in. Thanks, Adam, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Danielle.
Before we get into what you're building with KixCare, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into this space in the first place?
Sure, I've spent my entire career in healthcare and really sort of stumbled into the healthcare space unintentionally, but I fell in love with it. I had finished my MBA many years ago now, but wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do next. But the big corporate world was not what excited me, and got introduced through a family connection to a couple of guys that were in the pharmacy space, and we hit it off, and I say the rest is history. And I really fell in love with the Canadian healthcare space, and that's been my career now for the past 13 plus years.
That's amazing. I find it so funny that you stumbled into that career because I also stumbled into this and fell in love with it. So that's always interesting to me when someone didn't set out to have this huge, impactful career, but then they kind of just fall into it. What's that saying that if you can get paid for doing what you love, then you've made it? So that's awesome.
And I think about healthcare, where if you can, you can run a successful business and help people at the same time, that's incredibly important and incredibly meaningful.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. We actually were just talking about this yesterday here in the office. We made a Instagram reel where we were talking about how much we love to approve claims for really important things, kids speech therapy, and
Yeah.
and chemotherapy and IVF, all the things that mean a lot. So I totally hear what you're saying. So where did that passion come from? Where did it start? Like you were looking at the industry and you saw that something needed to change. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I was not one of the original founders of KixCare, but was sort of very happy to come in at this particular time. I had my own health challenges growing up, so certainly recognizing what KixCare was doing and how it was helping families resonated immediately. And I saw what the company was doing, I saw what the opportunity was, and really wanted to get involved. And now I've been here for more than 2 years, and really am incredibly excited about what the future holds in store for us, but also really proud of what we've built so far. There have been more than 30,000 kids that we've served since the company started. So the results are just incredible, and the feedback that we get every day, every week, every month from families is really special. And that's a really important piece for us, not to get lost in sort of the day-to-day operational pieces and the long-term pieces of running a business, but just to remember, that we are here providing a healthcare service to families, and hearing those stories and hearing that feedback is what continues to drive us.
That's amazing. It's so important because I think that, especially for families, parents with kids or guardians of children, the healthcare system is especially daunting. It's especially scary. You have everything on the line, and it's such an innate thing in your nature that you must keep your child safe. So it's such an important industry that you found yourself in. I'm going to give you a tricky one to start us off here. Can you give me what your elevator pitch of KixCare is? If I didn't know you and you had to explain to me in a couple of minutes what KixCare does, can you do that for me?
I'd say very simply, it's virtual care for kids and teens, 24/7 virtual support anywhere across the country from coast to coast, for whatever a child's mental or physical health care needs may be. Everything from, cold and flu symptoms, and we say sniffles and sore tummies, all the way to behavioral challenges and anxiety. So whatever questions a parent or a guardian may have, we're here to support with them, and that's anytime, anywhere.
And is the age range like 0 to 18?
That's exactly right. So everything from, newborn babies all the way up to the teenage years. And that's sort of an important part of our message, is really to say that, people hear the word pediatrics and you often assume young kids, but the reality is we're providing support really through the entire parenting journey and that child's entire stages, all of their stages of development. And obviously the concerns that somebody may have at 6 months or a year are going to be different than what's happening at 16 years. But we're there to support the entire time.
Yeah, yeah, those 2 different parts of the journey, like, parents, man, they go through it. I just thought of something, you must not have it get quieter at night. It must stay just busy at nighttime because that's when the babies are up sick or teenagers are up with anxiety, or I'm guessing that there isn't really, that daytime versus nighttime hourly influx for you. It's probably just busy all the time.
And that's exactly why we're here 24/7. You talk about the middle of the night, there's a lot of cases, and we see it and hear it all the time, and whenever we talk about these stories, we see parents nodding their head, but it's, 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's a child up with, a fever or flu symptoms, and you're not sure what to do, and even if you have a family doctor, you're not gonna see that doctor at 2 o'clock in the morning, and so inevitably, where do parents turn? They turn to the emergency room, and that could be, a day-long visit for something that in reality isn't an emergency, that's just the only option out there. And, we're able to resolve more than 90% of cases virtually. Really, we're at about a 92% virtual resolution rate. So if we can keep 92% of families out of the urgent care clinic or out of the emergency room or being able to seek care from the comfort of their own home, that's a pretty big game changer. But everything from, kids that are waking up in the morning not feeling well to coming home from school not feeling well, or it's that, sort of evening time and those behavioral challenges are setting in, or it's a fever at midnight and there's nowhere else to turn. So we really see the full spectrum of cases, and that's where 24/7, 365 is important.
Yeah, and congratulations on the 92% resolution rate. What I think of with that is a win for everyone because I have a lot of nieces and nephews. I don't have any children of my own, but I'm from a big family with lots of children and teens. And I've heard so many horror stories of when you do have an emergency, going to the emergency room, and it is so backed up because kids have sniffles and things like that. Not to say that that isn't like an emergency necessarily, but I'm sure there's probably a lot of those kids that they give, some Tylenol and say go home and get some rest. And then there's other kids with appendicitis that need to get in right now. So taking that load off of the emergency room is obviously very important.
And
Uh,
and that's an important piece for us. Our team works at some of the leading children's hospitals across the country, and they've trained there. So we say the same nurse you might wait 6 or 8 or 12 hours to see in person is who you'll talk to, on the KixCare platform in a matter of minutes. So you're getting really the exact same support and the exact same guidance, but instantaneously from the comfort of home. And one of the really important things for us is early intervention. So, especially when it comes to kids with those sort of early signs of a sickness, if you can provide that parent with that immediate guidance and support, it'll help prevent maybe a day or two later that, rush trip to the urgent care clinic or emergency room. So if a parent can reach out at the first sign of a fever or the first sign of sniffles, and ask that question and get guidance immediately on how to manage that, there's a significantly reduced chance that they're going to have to go seek care in person a day or two later, maybe because there was an issue that they didn't realize was as severe as it was, or things have gotten worse. But if you intervene quickly and early, then the chances of getting things under control are all the better.
Yeah, and I think even just having the ability to call and have some reassurance or not have to assume. I'm thinking when you were talking about that, I was thinking of a story from my family when I was a little girl and all of the kids were little. We all had a flu going through the house. Everyone was sick with the flu. My little brother just happened to be also battling appendicitis, but he had all the symptoms of a flu. And so my poor parents, they were going, "Well, everybody has the same symptoms, but he seems especially bad." And he was like 6 years old. He was just a little guy. And they thought, "Well, let's see if everyone gets better and he doesn't." But if they had had KixCare at the time and they could call, maybe the nurses would have said, "You know what? He seems especially bad. Let's just get him in." They got him in, and unfortunately, he's okay, but unfortunately, he had been too late at the time. His appendicitis had burst, and so he had a way bigger care journey than unfortunately if but it was just that timing. He just had the flu at the same time as all the other kids, and they didn't have anywhere to turn because that was 30 years ago or whatever. So, that's really interesting.
And that's a story you maybe think of 2 points there. One is every time we talk about what we're doing, either we have current parents who say, "I need this right away," or we have people that say, "You know what? I wish this existed when I was raising my kids, or I wish this existed when I was a kid." I think about, my own journey as a kid, and I certainly wish a service like this existed. But even thinking about your brother's case, where there's obviously a need for him to go to the emergency room immediately, this is one of the areas where our team also assists. So, in those 92% of cases where we can help people stay out of the emergency room, it's incredibly helpful. But also in those situations where you can talk to somebody and our team can pretty quickly assess, hey, this is not just a typical cold or flu. You need to go to the emergency room. They can also give, parents that guidance of what to say so that, they're being seen quickly, they're being triaged appropriately, and something like an appendicitis is not, it is not sort of sitting and waiting until it's too late.
Yeah, the importance of advocating for yourself or your child and having the right things to say, the language to use,
Yeah.
and it's not coming from, Google and ChatGPT, no offense to those things, but they're not a professional opinion and they're not really a healthy thing. I'm sure there's lots of parents that Google everything on the earth when their kid is sick, but having someone that they can just go to still digitally, still virtually, and actually get expert advice, I think is so important. From where you're sitting now, what do you think the biggest barriers are that Canadian families are running into when they're trying to access pediatric care?
There's a lot of challenges. I mean, there's 1.5 million kids right now in Canada who don't have a primary care doctor, or nurse practitioner. I know you see a lot of stories in the news across the country about challenges in accessing primary care, and kids are certainly not exempt from that. And even for those who are lucky enough to have a primary care provider, doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be able to see that person the same day or the next day. And we hear stories, some people are lucky they can get into their primary care provider that same day, and some people could be waiting days or weeks. And so even having a primary care provider doesn't guarantee you're going to be seen on a timely basis. So just sort of that ability to access care is challenging. Secondly, look at a big country like Canada, and depending on where you live geographically, the access to care. So if you're living in a big city, maybe there is a pediatric clinic around the corner from you, or you could be living in a remote community where you're hours and hours away from care. And so being able to access care virtually really levels the playing field. And whether you're in a remote community or a big city and it's 9 in the morning or, midnight, everybody has access there. And third, really, there is just a challenge in understanding how the system works. And, I think about an example where you may have a child in need of mental health services, and what you often have is mom and dad or grandma and grandpa, whoever it may be, calling every psychologist's office in the city, asking how long their wait list is and trying to navigate care or figuring out, should I be seeing a psychologist or a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or a social worker? And sort of just that piece of navigating the system is incredibly challenging, even for parents who do have access to professionals. And so just all of these things combined create a lot of challenges.
Yeah, it's stressful, like so stressful thinking about, families, especially when you were saying remote communities. Imagine you have a kid that's sick in a remote community and your nearest hospital is like a 6 hour drive. That would be so then I know there's other options, but you're not exactly going to call stars for, it's such an important service. So when a parent is facing that stressful situation and they want to reach out to KixCare, is it telephone, virtual call, text? Like what method is it?
Yeah, it's virtual. So through the KixCare app or on desktop, it's instant messaging and video calls with our team. And really, within a matter of minutes, you're talking to the same person you'd be talking to if you went to, whatever the leading children's hospital was in your area or as close to your area as possible. So it's really instantaneous messaging with pediatric experts, and the goal is obviously to get people seen as quickly as possible.
Do you find that it's mostly one-off cases, or do you have some people who kinda latch on and find a practitioner they like? And if they do they get routed to the same practitioner if they're available?
So what we see on average is parents using us about 8 to 9 times a year. So this is not a one and done. This is very much ongoing support, and they can reach out as many times as they need. So if a parent reaches out with a question about, let's say, their child's flu symptoms, we're obviously going through a very challenging cold and flu season right now. We can give them some preliminary guidance on how to manage a fever, for example, or what signs to look for. And if they want to reach out 4 hours or 6 hours later or 2 days later, they're welcome to reach out as many times as they need. So it is that unlimited support through our Kix 360 program. And depending on the nature of the care that's needed, sometimes they may see the same provider. If they're reaching out, 8 or 10 hours later, it could be a different provider. When it comes to our mental health services, we've got a big team of psychologists, social workers, psychotherapists, dietitians, behavior analysts. And once a child and a family have a relationship with a therapist, they can continue that for as many sessions as they need. And that's an important piece when it comes to therapy and ongoing support is building that trust between the provider and the child and the family. And that's where that ability to have those ongoing appointments with that same provider is incredibly important and build that trust.
That's okay, so many things stood out to me from what you're saying, so I'm writing notes. When you were talking about it's so much broader than just the physical. There's so many mental supports through KixCare as well. And I often think that children probably have a heavier mental load than we give them credit for, teens especially. A lot of them are going through things that we could never relate to as adults, like divorce. Their parents are divorcing, or they're going through bullying, not just at school, but after school, online, and they're going through changes physically and sometimes emotionally as well. And then there's the identity piece. So there's so much that teenagers are going through and young people are going through. Do the psychologists specialize in these areas, or are they kind of generalists, or how do you tackle all those really heavy topics with kids?
I think you hit the nail on the head, which is how do you make sure that the child and the family are speaking to the provider that has that right expertise? And that's a really important piece for us. And this is where our Kix 360 program really differs from other virtual care services where it may just be who's available next. Whereas our goal is really to match that child and that family with the most appropriate provider, both in terms of the provider's actual practice area, as well as sort of the types of cases that they specialize in. I'll give an example where we had a young girl who was suffering from an eating disorder, and so she was paired with a psychotherapist who had experience in dealing with eating disorders. And at the same time, she also began working with a dietitian from our team to work on the practical diet pieces. And that's where there's the ability to coordinate care as well. So it's incredibly important for us. And we take, when it comes to mental and allied health services, our team takes that very seriously in matching so that the most appropriate provider is seeing that child. And again, compared to, wait lists in the community that can be 9 months or 12 months, to be able to be matched with somebody in a matter of days or weeks and be seen virtually from the comfort of home or wherever that child may be, the feedback that we're getting and the results that we're seeing is just remarkable.
That's amazing. That story is amazing. And it made me wonder if a child is going through something like that, do they have to route through their parents to get to KixCare? Can they come direct and kind of bring it up? How does that work? Like if the child's old enough to kind of advocate for themselves and they know they have this resource?
Yeah, I mean, what we see obviously a lot of parents that are accessing our services are doing it through their group benefits through the employer. So oftentimes it may begin with the parents, but certainly once you have children that reach the appropriate age where they can consent to therapy on their own, they can absolutely attend sessions on their own. They can be the ones initiating it. Depending on what the need may be, that's a conversation with the child and the therapist and potentially the family as well. Is it a matter of having some sessions are one-on-one and some may involve the family? There could be separate sessions. So really each child's situation and case is approached very uniquely and collaboratively with our team and the family. We'll come up with whatever the most appropriate plan is. But the simple answer is yes, absolutely. If there's a need for children to be attending, I say children, in many cases teenagers, who want to be attending sessions on their own without their parents, that's very understandable, and that's certainly something that we can support with.
That's amazing. It really sounds like such a good product, especially to support each stage, depending on their comfort zones and everything like that. And it sounds like it makes it more comfortable for the child in a lot of cases. Like going to a doctor, going to the hospital can be kind of scary. And if you don't have to, if you can get it resolved over a virtual appointment, that sounds like it could be more comfortable.
And that's something just quickly that we talk a lot about, especially when it comes to therapy is, going through whether it's an eating disorder, you made reference to divorce or bullying issues. Those issues on their own are challenging. But then the idea of going to a doctor's office or going to a therapist's office and sitting in the waiting room and maybe having to leave school early for an appointment, all of these things add additional stress to the situation. And so if there's an ability for that child or that teenager to be doing a therapy session from their room or sitting in the backyard on a nice day, as long as they're somewhere obviously quiet and private or wherever it may be, but to be able to get that care in a place where they're comfortable, we're seeing really fantastic results. And there are certainly situations where virtual is not appropriate and that family may want to be seen in person. But again, in so many of these cases, the ability to meet the child where they are and get care where they're comfortable really makes a big difference in getting not only getting that initial session, but continuing that therapy.
I totally understand that because even as an adult, during the pandemic especially, I went for my therapy, my just upkeep therapy over virtual, and it made a huge difference just to be able to pet my dog during my
Yeah.
therapy session. Like, what a difference to be able to just be with your pet or hold your stuffed animal if you have one that you like, or be in your bedroom, as you said. So, I think that that's probably understated how important that kind of or what a difference that can make.
Yeah. And again, it reduces those barriers that somebody in the big city or in a small town or a remote community has equal access to care. I know, people often ask about in-person visits, and the reality is for a large proportion of the population in Canada, in-person is really a challenge, if not completely off the table. And, we're even doing work in indigenous communities where in some of these cases, there may be a doctor who comes in every 6 weeks, and the only option for in-person care may be if they're using medical transportation to leave a community. So we just see so many options and opportunities where virtual not only bridges a gap that exists, but really is an option when no other option exists.
Yeah, when you were talking about remote communities, indigenous communities were the first ones that came to mind because that's a huge passion point for us at Might Just Say too, is how do we get care in this day and age, it's possible through virtual care to provide a really holistic approach to virtual care to people in remote communities. So that's I'm totally aligned on that. That is so important. Um, Tell me again what year KixCare was founded?
KixCare was founded in 2021, so we are coming up to the company's 5-year anniversary. We have a lot of exciting things planned to celebrate all the care that's been delivered since the beginning.
That's awesome, congratulations. 2021 is interesting because that would have been pandemic party and virtual care. That must have been was that like an explosive start for KixCare then? Because a lot of people not only couldn't go to the doctor, but wouldn't. It was too scary to leave the house. Is that something that really impacted the growth of the company at the beginning, do you think?
That was exactly what inspired it. So it was a team of doctors who founded KixCare, recognizing that, when the pandemic hit, doctors' offices closed, pediatricians' offices closed, in person wasn't really an option. And as virtual care was becoming more and more widely accepted, sort of the model that traditionally worked for adults is not what the model that's going to work for kids. And that's really how KixCare was born, recognizing that virtual is incredibly important, and there's a huge need for it, certainly in the times of the pandemic and still today. But a different model is needed to best look after families, and that's what led to the founding of KixCare. And I think, since then, obviously, concerns around COVID have reduced, and pediatricians' offices have reopened, but we're seeing more and more demand than ever, just because people are comfortable with virtual, and there's a great way to reach families and kids, but also for working parents taking a day off of work to go to a doctor's office and drive across town and pick up your kid from school. That's a huge impact on families and on working professionals, and disproportionately, that's working moms. We see on average working moms with young kids are losing as many as 6 days of work per year more than their peers. So if we can help reduce that and say, hey, you can see somebody in a couple of minutes virtually versus taking half a day or a day off of work to go for an in-person visit, that's a game changer for parents, for moms, and for employers.
Yeah, yeah, I know we have some moms here at my HSA and dads, but the stories that I've heard of were from the moms. saying that virtual care was a total game changer when it came to their kids because, like you said, they're losing so much time at work, productivity, and it's not their fault. It's they have to be the mom first, and it disproportionately affects moms, I think, compared to dads. But yeah, I think that's it's the pandemic was a very difficult, and very sad time, but it's crazy to see how the industry changed, the landscape changed, and there was so much innovation born out of it that we need anyways. And I think to your point, the worries around, COVID have definitely subsided, but I think that in general, people's understanding and visibility over disease and how it spreads has changed. I find that I see way more people now that when they're sick, they'll put on a mask than before because they understand how disease spreads more than they used to. Staying home from work or school used to be kind of like a cop out, and now everyone's like, please, for the love, stay home if you're sick. Like, do not bring this to work. And I've definitely noticed a shift. So I think congratulations on the big milestone coming out. That's amazing.
And even just talking about the impact of COVID, certainly there's been a lot of lessons for adults and how we approach work, but even just thinking about kids, that was really, you saw a big shift in the discussion in general in society, in the news about kids' mental health. And certainly there had been, increasing issues when it came to kids' mental health before COVID. And then really it became a really important topic of conversation during the pandemic when kids weren't able to go to school in person and go and play with their friends. And, not that COVID was a positive thing, certainly it wasn't, but it did bring this issue really to the forefront that pediatric mental health needed a lot more attention. And now it's getting the attention that it very much needs.
Which everything ever since the pandemic and before the pandemic, it seems like the younger generations coming up right now are facing unprecedented thing after unprecedented thing. Like it's pandemics and then AI and all these things that they really humans were really never meant to try and digest. And so I think that again, the pandemic was obviously a sad time, but this innovation born out of it is going to help with the general population of teens and kids coming up to get through some pretty hard times that are coming up. Innovative times, but hard times, I think, with AI and social media and things like that changing.
For sure, we just had one of our pediatricians is just hosted a two-part webinar, which is an important part of our program, is making resources like webinars available to parents. But just hosted a two-part webinar on the impact of screen time on kids' brain development. And we had a really incredible response to the first part. We've now had the second part, and just a lot of the research coming out on how social media and screen time is impacting young brains. There's a lot that parents need to know, and these are the sorts of resources that we're trying to bring to the forefront and put in the hands of parents.
I love that. I can't overstate how much I love that because I actually was just talking to my sister-in-law last week. She and I were hanging out, and she had just gotten back from a Girl Guides event where they did a session for parents of girls, especially in this case, about social media and its impact, especially on girls. But I think that parents a lot of times they feel helpless. Like there's so much information out there. Some of it's good information, some of it's bad information. Most of the information they're getting is from social media itself. And they're just trying to figure out how do I navigate this whole different world with my kids who every kid has a different standard. Some kids get a phone at 16. Some parents are, I'm not giving my kid a phone at 16. Things as young as, online virtual gaming for little kids even has some dangers to it. So it's a whole uncharted world, and I think that those webinars are probably just gonna take off because parents really need that support. Do you do webinars and things like that with the kids involved sometimes too, or is it mostly just for parents?
It's both. So we have a lot of our resources are really targeted at parents and caregivers, but we've got resources for people of all ages, and we try to cover as many different topics as possible. So our ongoing webinar series, everything from, as I said, how screen time is impacting kids' brain development to, preparing for holiday travel and how to stay safe to cold and flu season to managing. I know we've done webinars on end of school or back to school and how changing seasons can impact behaviors and routines. So Our goal again is to be there not only when a parent has an immediate question, there's a cold, there's a fever, but also just being there as ongoing supports throughout their parenting journey and throughout that child's development at all stages. So, you know, there, as you said, parents are getting their information from all of these different sources, and there's Dr. Google, and there are Facebook groups of parents, and you can't necessarily be sure of where the information is coming from or what is credible or what isn't. And that's where, we see ourselves as being that voice, that expert, that team of experts to provide the appropriate guidance and resources and also tailor it to that individual child's needs, because no two kids are alike.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Even in the same family, 2 kids could
Yeah.
be completely different. Okay, well, I didn't know that you guys were doing that, so that's really cool. I really love that you're doing that. I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit to, well, we were already talking about it, but back to mental health again. If a parent has concerns about their kids' mental health, can you show me a little bit of what that journey looks like? Like the parent reaches out, let's say they express that they have like a 14-year-old that they're really worried about who's having maybe depression or anxiety or something like that. What does that journey look like for them?
Yeah, so the care starts with our team of pediatric registered nurses, and so again, these are nurses that have spent time in the top children's hospitals across the country, and they'll do an initial assessment, and then depending on what the initial assessment indicates, that could be a need for perhaps a more detailed assessment with a nurse practitioner who specializes in mental health. Or perhaps there's a need for behavior therapy, and we can pair them with a behavioral analyst, or maybe there's a need for more significant counseling, and that's where a psychotherapist could come in, or perhaps there's even a need for a more comprehensive exam and a diagnosis where a psychologist can come in. And that's really where that process comes in, where they're getting the immediate support from one of our registered nurses and then being paired with whoever that most appropriate professional is, or in some cases, maybe it's more than one professional, and it could be exploring a few different avenues. And so again, everybody is supported immediately by our team, and then depending on the individual family's needs, we're going to find the most appropriate practitioner for them.
And if let's say the kid goes through that process and it's determined that they should be on a new medication or something like that, can prescriptions be provided through the platform as well?
Absolutely, our team supports with medication management. If there's a need to order blood work for some reason, we can do that, or issue a lab requisition. And this is really where our team, again, it's more than just an individual visit or traditional virtual care where you'd say, come on, you get a 15-minute video call and then goodbye. This is where our team really works together, and we have this interdisciplinary team sort of in the same way that, the children's hospitals are set up, where you have this big team of nurses and doctors and mental health professionals and allied health specialists. We've created the same model, but virtually. And so whatever that need is, if it's ongoing therapy and medication management and, intermediate support from the nurses 24/7, if there's a question, and parenting support, we can bring all those resources together for the family. One of the other important things when we talk about, and talking about HSAs and how this impacts people at work, about half of parents have missed work because of their kids' mental health. About 80% of parents have said that their work life is somehow impacted by their kids' mental health. So this plays again a really dramatic role in how companies can operate and how parents are able to go to work every day. And if you're sitting at, whether it's at the office or wherever you may work or working from home, and you're worried every afternoon about what's going to happen when your child comes home from work, and are they being bullied or what's happening, this is where, it's not just an immediate impact on the child, but an impact on the family, on the extended family, on the workplace as well.
Absolutely. Even if my nieces or nephews are going through something that's heavy mentally, I think about them and I carry that with me at work. And they're not even my kids. They're not. I don't take care of them. They're not under my guardianship at all. But and kids are going through some really hard things. So I totally get how that would impact the parents or anyone really in the vicinity of children that need care in their workplace. How do you approach it if a parent brings a case to you? Let's say it's still that 14-year-old and they really seem to think that their kid is in crisis. How does that work?
Yeah. Again, really every situation is unique. Certainly our team, if there is really an urgent need, and again, we talk about sort of those 8% of cases where virtual isn't appropriate. If there is an immediate concern, certainly our team will recommend what the next steps are, whether that's going to the emergency room or whatever it may be. And so again, making sure that that child is being looked after safely and appropriately is first and foremost the most appropriate priority. And so if there's an immediate need, we'll certainly address it that way. We will provide ongoing follow-up. If it is appropriate for a therapy session, we can have that scheduled generally in a matter of just a couple of days. And so depending on, again, each situation is unique, but we are there with the family every step of the way.
I mean, that support is probably huge too for parents. And every time you answer a question, a new one pops into my head. So I've got another one for you. What if a parent suspects that their child has maybe some sort of neurodivergence?
We get these questions a lot, and the answer is we're seeing more and more of these questions and concerns coming in. And so, yes, we do support with assessments and diagnoses and helping with long-term care plans. So, absolutely, and whatever that question may be, we're here for it.
And that, of course, dawned another question because that might just say something we see all the time that we love to see as a claim is when children they've been put into a specialized program that's really fit to their needs because they're neurodivergent or they need to have a different learning style. And when we get those claims, we do need a medical practitioner to prescribe that school and that program for the child. Is that something that Kids Care can do as well?
Absolutely. So again, our team, depending on who the most appropriate provider is, can assess that child's needs, and we can support in whatever way is appropriate and best for that child.
If a family has been kind of mandated to have counseling for their children, during divorce court or something like that, or even just family therapy, is that an area where KixCare can support as well and can kind of provide the workup at the end to say what they experienced with the child and what the outcomes were?
Yeah, I would say for us in those sorts of situations, it's a matter of, again, finding the most appropriate professional for that child's needs. And if it's a matter of supporting a child who's going through a divorce and maybe there's some more complicated components to that situation. For us, it's a matter of going through our team, seeing who has the most appropriate experience there, who can support in that situation and really best meet that child and family's needs.
All of these questions are kind of coming up just because of how disruptive those journeys can be to a child's life and just smoothing it out, ironing it out for the parents, the children, everything. Like those divorce or things like that are going to be messy just naturally, but any way that it can be made easier or smoothed out is I think such an innovative way to go about it.
And one of the things you're highlighting there is that, mental health, is really quite unique, and the different circumstances that a child and a family may face throughout their life can be very, very different. And so our approach to mental health virtually is not the typical model of, okay, click a button and you're talking to a therapist, because dealing with a 12-year-old with an eating disorder or an 8-year-old with behavioral challenges or a 16-year-old dealing with signs of depression or somebody going through the divorce, these are all very different circumstances, and it could require a different professional in a different area of specialty. And so we really do take that individualized approach to mental and allied health services. Again, making sure that the child is speaking to the most appropriate professional based on their individual needs. So this is not sort of, I'm going to say, next up in terms of how do you just find the next person available the quickest. It's looking at that individual's needs and saying who is most appropriate here. And the other component of that, of course, is taking into account, does that family have benefits available to them? Are they using their HSA dollars? How can we also maximize those financial resources that are available so that, that the financial component doesn't become a concern either?
Yeah, yeah, that's a perfect segue into the next section of questions. I was going to talk about benefits and the workplace perspective because a lot of my HSA's listeners on this podcast are going to be insurance advisors, brokers, HR professionals, and hopefully it reaches some employers as well. We kind of talked about how the mental health, physical health of your child really impacts the guardian's productivity at work. But what are employers telling you about what they're seeing when you bring on a new employer? Are you seeing patterns emerging with what they're bringing up to you?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. One is the feedback overall is really really fantastic. Um, Even for those clients where perhaps they have another virtual care service already in place servicing their employees, very quickly the parents are recognizing that KixCare is where to go if they have a question around their kids, and so we really see KixCare as the one-stop shop for everything when it comes to their kids' health. One of the interesting statistics that we've seen recently is that 97% of working moms said they would stay longer in a role where they felt supported in their motherhood. 97% is a very high number. And we know, as I mentioned, we see on average people using us, 8 plus times a year. And so, the results really speak for themselves. The feedback is fantastic. And we know that once a parent has access to this service, they are not letting go of it.
Absolutely. 97%, and I'm sure that on the flip side of 97% of working moms say they would stay longer, I'd be interested to know what percentage of moms say, "If you don't put me being a mother first, I'm out." Because that would be me. If I was a mom and I was coming to work every day, and my employer stood in the way of me getting the care I need for my kid, I'd be like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go somewhere else then."
And
And I
and this
think
is
that's
where
what
I'm
makes it
sure
fair.
I'm sure as you're seeing, benefits are becoming much more tailored. I think the days of here's a drug and dental plan and enjoy it are long gone, and more we're seeing families or employees looking for support for their family. And this is one of those services where, people just fall in love with it so quickly because, reaching out to us once is all you need to understand the experience and to see how valuable it is.
Absolutely. I know that there are so many people, so many super talented employees out there that are huge contributors that are missing out on important milestones at work and the ability to grow and develop their role and go into leadership and things because of the barriers standing in the way. And to your point, I think that benefits are shifting now to be less of this is the package we built for you and more how do we work together in community to build a package that fits everyone, and everyone has totally different journeys, especially in a workplace. Some people don't have kids. A lot of people don't have kids. People do have kids. People are going through divorces. People are retiring. People are grandparents who are taking their kids in or their grandkids in as new dependents of theirs. There's everything is changing in benefits. And one thing that's changing across all industries, I find, is people are expecting more control over things. They want to control, when a package is delivered to their doorstep, when they can access something, what their money is going towards. They want visibility. Everything has a dashboard. They want to see what their money is paying for. Gone are the days of the employee or the customer kind of being not in the driver's seat, I think. And so something that my HSA is really working on right now, and this is why KixCare and my HSA are working together, is because we want to put the employee in control of what medical care they access using their dollars because that's the flexible benefit. That's why we have flexible benefits in place. And something like KixCare means that the employee who is maybe a parent can access what practitioners, how often, because that's another thing that, and I don't mean to harp on insurance because our listeners are insurance advisors, but I have a loved one who has kids who he'd like to have in therapy and they only get 2 sessions each. And he's like, 2 sessions a year isn't gonna do enough for my kid. So, I think that there are definitely some gaps that, are needed to be filled, and I think that that's something that we're very aligned on.
And you brought up something interesting because you made reference to not everybody having young kids, but maybe there are some grandparents, and this is an area where we're seeing a lot of interest as well. Is that maybe there are employees that no longer have kids that are under 18, but now they've got kids who have young kids, and so we see more and more grandparents actually making use of our services or organizations that allow the grandparents in their company to extend this benefit to their kids so that their grandkids are getting seen. So this is again one of those services that really has a broad appeal.
It takes a village, right?
It
Like,
takes a village.
grandparents, aunties, uncles, anyone who who takes care of children or supports parents. And I love to see it. I love to see the village around parents. And I think this is a big part of it. If any of our advisors are listening or employers and they're considering adding virtual pediatric care to their benefits plan, what do you think are the most important things that they can take away from this conversation?
I'd say reach out to us and you can see it for yourselves. We always say if somebody wants to try the service for their own family, inevitably in every conversation that we have with benefits folks or advisors or HR individuals, there are at least a couple of parents on that call or in that room who we see very quickly are nodding their heads yes. And so once you see it, you understand it. And all I can say is when you look at sort of the levels of utilization that we have compared to traditional virtual care, people are using it. They use it often. They come back again and again, and the results speak for themselves. So again, with a 92+% virtual resolution rate, and people are coming back to us 8 times a year on average, just think of the number of days that that saves from an employee's perspective and the impact that that has on the organization. So, we have organizations, big and small companies like Air Canada and Bell and some of the most recognizable names in Canada that have this available to their employees. And please, we would encourage any of your listeners that are advisors or employers or plan sponsors to reach out, and we'd be happy to get it set up.
Yeah, I well said. And I think also if there are any listeners that aren't sure how to have it paid for, that's where my HSA can come in because everything that KixCare does, all of the practitioners that are available through KixCare happen to be eligible under an HSA, and we can either provide it through my HSA and it can be a package, or we can carve it out as a specific benefit for specific people based on what your working force looks like. So the good thing is if you're not sure if it fits into your traditional insurance or you're not sure how you're going to fit it in, um, KixCare and my HSA can work together to build out a good package for employers and advisors who want to make that happen. You kind of mentioned a story about that girl who reached out and she had an eating disorder, but are there any other moments that kind of stand out to you where you thought to yourself like, "Dang, I'm so glad I'm doing this"?
There's so many. I mean, really every single review that comes back, I read. And, we've had that one always sticks out to me, especially because of the ability for us to get our practitioners working together and sort of build a whole care plan around that particular child. A lot of the stories, I've got somebody with autism in my family, and so when I hear some of the stories coming back from our parents, from the parents that use our services in terms of how we're supporting their kids that may be on the spectrum, those stories are particularly meaningful to me. The other piece, and especially now, I've got a lot of friends that have young kids, and so I'll get text messages directly from my friends saying, so and so, so and so was sick, and we reached out to KixCare, and so those are the stories that I really like, where not only do I hear the amazing results from parents, but I know who the child is on the other side, and so it's nice to see that. It's nice to see the personal touch and to get the text message, half an hour later saying, I just reached out and you saved us a visit. Happened a lot over this cold and flu season, but seeing it with kids that I know and spend time with is really nice as well.
Aw, I love that. I can relate to that too. I have someone who is on my HSA, but I know them personally, and they got their kid braces, orthodontics.
Yeah.
And they're sending me pictures. Oh, look, he's got his braces on now, and then I see that his claim came through, and we can approve it. It's kind of the same kind of vibe, and I think that that really just drives the momentum. If you feel personally like you're really making a difference, and you can actually see it in the lives of loved ones, that really, really helps especially. So, looking ahead 3 to 5 years, what do you think the biggest opportunities are for pediatric healthcare in Canada?
Say for us, as we continue to grow, we just see so many opportunities to serve more and more families and really getting the word out and partnering with groups like my HSA, where we can get this in the hands of more parents and get in front of more employers and get in front of more insurance companies. We continue to announce new partnerships all the time, and I just see so many opportunities for us to get in front of more and more families, especially as sort of the need for more family-focused benefits gets raised more and more to the forefront. We hear about it more and more, and think this is the perfect time. And as technology continues to evolve, there's going to be more that we can do virtually to support families. And so really excited about the continuing evolution on the technology side. We already have a digital diagnostic tool called the N9 Plus that we're using with families. So there's a lot more that we can give to families directly so that they can take greater ownership of their kids' healthcare.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and I'm really excited to see everything that you're working on. I think it's really cool. I'm gonna hop off this podcast after this, and I'm gonna go tell my I have 9 siblings, and they pretty much all have kids. So I've got like 35 nieces and nephews, ranging from tiny little babies up to teenagers, and I'm gonna go tell all their parents all of the things about, and kind of what you said too, like, autism is actually prevalent in my family. It's not just, I don't just have one person in my family that's neurodivergent. We've got quite a few, and we've got some little kids coming up where we're kinda going, we've seen this before." So I think that just having this, tool in the pockets of many parents will be very important.
And that's that piece especially where, and we hear this a lot from parents as well, where they see something and maybe there's a question and maybe they're not sure if there's signs of something, or maybe they're out with their friends' kids and someone's not developing as fast as the other ones are. So one of the important things that we talk about is early intervention. Early intervention when it comes to a physical health concern. The second there's a sign of a fever or a flu, reach out. The same thing when it comes to questions around mental health is if you do have that moment, and it's not always easy for parents to reach out and ask that questions or maybe come to terms with the fact that there may be some unique challenges. But if there is that question, the sooner they reach out, the better, and the earlier collectively the team can intervene, the better the outcome is.
I can stand behind that for sure. I know, we have 2 generations in my family, and my brother has autism. He's actually very vocal about it on LinkedIn. He even made a, really cool little video about it, but he's very vocal about how everything changed once he was diagnosed. He made a little, cartoon animation. It's really, really good. It's award-winning, and it's about 15 minutes long, where he, animated his experience as someone who is on the spectrum and didn't get diagnosed until he was about 11 or 12 years old, and how then he was given all the tools he needed to go to school and advocate for his learning experience and advocate for himself with his friends, and everything opened up for him, and that's, I think, so important is that early intervention. Like, he was 11, and then in the next generation with my siblings' kids, we see signs very early, and we're very open to it, and it wasn't like that, 25 years ago. Now it's a lot easier to just, let's just go ask. What's the harm in asking? And you find out, and it's a beautiful thing, and then you get the right teachers, and you get the right systems in place for the child, and, yeah, I'm a big believer in early intervention.
And I think a lot of families have similar examples where, I wish, where they'll say, I wish we could have found a resource sooner, or I wish it was easier to navigate, or again, I wish when I was younger this existed. And so I think, especially now where people understand it a little more, and there's at least certainly with us, greater access to resources, we just encourage families to reach out the second they have a question or a concern. And yeah, we can try to get care as early and quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's a win-win for everyone, it sounds
It's
like.
a win for everybody.
That's excellent. Well, I'm all out of questions for you. Did you have any questions for me before we close out?
No, I really appreciate you having me on today and giving us the opportunity to talk about KixCare, and really happy to establish this relationship with my HSA so that we can support your clients and your families, and again get the care into the hands of as many Canadian families as we can.
Yeah, likewise. Very excited about it, and very happy to see that KixCare and my HSA will be working together. So, thanks again for joining us today.
Thanks, Danielle. I really appreciate it.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Beyond the Plan. Thank you to Adam and the team at KixCare for the work they're doing to support families across Canada. If you'd like to learn more about their services or connect with their team, you can visit KixCare.com. If this conversation has you rethinking how your organization supports working families through your benefit strategy, reach out to us at MyHSA by going to getmyhsa.com. And if you'd like to keep the conversation going, you can find me on LinkedIn. Again, my name is Danielle Constantine. I share regular insights on benefits design, leadership, and what we're seeing across the Canadian benefits landscape, and I'd love to connect with you. Be sure to follow Beyond the Plan wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss future episodes. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.